10:07, 7 past 10. The Bruce and Dan Show, hour number 2. Rush comes up right after at 11 o'clock. They're in for Don and Roma the rest of the week. John Kass of the Tribune and me, Jake Hartford, in for them.
Yeah. Talking foreign policy now.
Going into September 11th, it was all economy for the most part. And foreign policy was just kind of out there. And then it just, in the last 48 hours, it has really gotten interesting and strange. And I don't know how else to describe it.
Scary.
Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, can't get a meeting with the president.
But the president can see David Letterman. And apparently there's some report that he's going to meet with some Muslim Brotherhood, but I don't...
He's going to meet with the Egyptian president, Mohammed Morsi, next week in New York. And that's when Netanyahu wanted to meet with him, and the president didn't have time, although he has time to do Letterman. So the only thing I can think of that Morsi's also going to be on Letterman.
You saw this at the convention, Democratic convention, when there were people booing on the floor, delegates, when the issue of putting Jerusalem in as a capital of Israel was put back in the platform, and there were boos and screams and yells. And then you could see that the Democratic Party under Obama has a very difficult position with Israel, and that's building. So the pressure on that is building. Netanyahu's pushing. Who knows what will happen with Iran now?
And they keep saying, well, Israel has nothing really to worry about because Iran, they'll never go atomic with them. They don't. What are they worried about? They won't get wiped off the face of the earth, even though he said he wants to wipe them off. And all I can think of is there was this thing called World War II. At least 6 million Jews were
and others, yeah.
And others were killed trying to. This German guy, of all times, they're always worried to bring up the Nazis and Hitler and all that.
Right.
Well, bring him up now, because remember, that's what Hitler was doing. And if I were, I'm not Jewish, but if I were, I'd be worried.
If I were Israeli, I'd be a militant. I'd be wanting to attack. But I'm an American, and these are things now we have to think: what's good for Israel? What's good for America? We'll have to see. And it's clear that, to me, that Obama, for all the help he gets from the media to demonize Romney over this Libya matter, he's kind of paralyzed when it comes to dealing with Israel and Iran. I don't think he wants to make a wrong move. I think he's, this whole business of meeting Letterman but not Netanyahu, and meeting the Egyptian but not the premier of Israel, I think that's ridiculous and embarrassing.
Maybe he doesn't want to offend some people.
Or maybe he doesn't want to have to be confronted on what other people want to do. And that's called that's called backbone. And remember, here's the same guy who bowed to the king, Saudi king, right? This is our president bowing from the waist. Like one of those drinking little birds that you put on the edge of the glass and bob up and down. Remember that? Bowing to the king of Saudi.
I got to watch the 3 statements yesterday. In Romney's case, it was a press conference, and I posted on the media, the social media, my comments yesterday at the time. And Hillary went first, and I got to tell you, of the 3, I think hers was the best. She made the points that had to be made. But she also was emotional. She also had passion and eloquence, and to me, she set the right tone. Romney did the press conference, and his problem was he was responding. His original press release that he put out Tuesday night, he wrote at 9 o'clock Chicago time, sent it out, but it was embargoed, which means reporters couldn't publish it.
But what was it about?
It was about the original uprising, about the movie that's on YouTube.
The ridiculous anti-Muslim movie.
That they're all upset about there. And then the embassy in Cairo tweeted on Twitter, this social media is going to get everybody in trouble one day, basically apologizing, saying that, they don't support.
Let's not offend.
Let's not offend.
People.
And forgetting the United States is all about First Amendment rights.
Right.
You can say whatever you want.
So
Romney was responding to that. So by midnight, when the embargo was off and reporters could use it, 9 minutes later, the Obama campaign responded and said he was doing politics. And this is kind of going around, but during the night, you had the ambassador to Libya and 3 others were killed. And there's a lot of reports there that they had moved him to a safer location, and the Libyan people told the people who did the attack where it was. It was a setup. And that's a whole other story. But that was the whole deal, though. I mean, so
he's responding to
the
ridiculous American embassy comment about let's not offend, angry Muslims. Okay, who are storming our walls.
But so then
yesterday, he gets caught up in this whole thing about whether he's politicizing.
So then but then he tries to explain it at the press conference. Yeah. And my comment to that was he looked like he was tap dancing in quicksand. And then shortly after that, about a half hour after that, the president came out in the Rose Garden, and he had Hillary with him.
Because he needed her to hold his hand?
She didn't say anything. He didn't take questions, and she didn't make any comments.
Is it 3 o'clock in the morning?
No.
Did she just make that phone call?
No.
Okay.
But she was there for whatever reason, I don't know. And some of what he was saying was taken out of her remarks.
He took everything from what she said. And it looked like America doesn't want another war. Let's baseline this, okay? People don't want to go to war, but we want our president to have some kind of outrage. And what he was doing, there was no he gets more upset over, capitalists than he does over these guys.
And that's the point I was getting at. He looked like he was just going through the motions. He didn't really, and he said what he said and left. And then he did an interview with 60 Minutes where he talked about Romney shoots first, aims later. Well, if you go back to the Carter campaign, that was Carter's thing about Reagan. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, he's taken this from Carter about the shooting first, aiming later. He's taking Hillary's comments about what happened in Libya, and then at the convention, his speech where he was saying some of his stuff was taken from Carter's convention speech.
And when we forget that while he by proxy his friends in the media, and there's 99% of them are dinging Romney for this. It was Senator Barack Obama in 2008, who was politicizing.
Eight soldiers getting killed in Iraq, yeah.
Going after McCain for support of Iraq. The point being, if you're running for president, Mr. Romney, I'll give you some advice. You're running for president, stand up to what you believe and say it, because this is an important issue.
That's John Kass. I'm Jake Hartford, 10:15. Back after this on 89 WLS.
89 WLS.
I want to remind you that the 89 WLS box office opens every Thursday, giving you a chance to win tickets to upcoming shows or events. Later today, we have your chance to win a 4-pack of tickets to the Geico 400 NASCAR Sprint Cup Series race this Sunday at Chicagoland Speedway. So be listening to that. We'll be taking your calls. John Kass, Jake Hartford in for Bruce and Dan. To the phones, John and Mundelein. John, you're on 89 WLS.
Hi, I just want to make a couple quick comments. I think that Mitt Romney missed a huge opportunity to get some much-needed credit to position himself as a statesman. He could have set politics aside and said, I join with the administration in condemning these attacks. Instead, he appears to have positioned himself as championing American values as represented by a smear film on Muslims that the crazy Quran-burning preacher is a big fan of. I mean, that's...
Wait a second. Now, you're twisted. You're going all around here. You support the right of the American to put out a stupid, racist film? Do you support that? Yes, you do, right?
The right to free speech, but
exactly.
So
okay.
You're saying that's the value that Mitt Romney was defending?
No, I'm asking you to defend your comments because they seem quite circular.
I think the film is a smear against Muslims, but I don't know why Mitt Romney appears to have positioned himself as defending this movie.
Well, the president did too, John. John, the president did too.
The president didn't defend the movie.
Well, he defended. Yes, he did, because he denounced the embassy in Cairo for putting out the tweet for going after the free speech.
Look, I have to say, I just heard Mr. Kass say something that is wildly unhinged. I'd like to ask you about it. You just said the president is
Did you
more
get the call from David Axelrod first before you called in?
You think
Did David tweeting
you?
Am I speaking to David?
About an embassy, our ambassador being killed. Do you really mean that?
What I said, sir, was that he showed more emotion about going after capitalism than he did on this issue. And what I also said, and if you could take David Axelrod out of your earpiece, you could have heard it.
What do you mean, David?
You know what I'm saying. What I also said was that that we don't want to go to war, but that we want a president to show a little bit more resolve than what he's showing.
Okay,
it seems like he's taking his talking points. He's taking them from Jimmy Carter and Hillary Clinton. He's the president.
Don't you realize that the people who are behind this movie are people who are itching for a holy war as much as radical Muslims are? Those are the people that Mitt Romney appears to be defending now.
Wait a minute.
Those people?
John, if you're going to say Romney's defending them, then you also have to say Obama is, because he denounced his own embassy for putting out the tweet attacking the first speech of the filmmakers. You have to say that.
Give
John?
me a quote of him saying that. What did he say? Let's look at
John, go in the news. Go in the news. He said it yesterday. I don't have all the quotes in front of me, but that's what he said yesterday. It's been reported. I'd be willing to make a bet on it, because they said the embassy was speaking for themselves. They weren't speaking for the administration. How else do you want to interpret that?
Look, we have the right to do whatever we want and say whatever we want. We're Americans. And nobody should apologize for us. On the other hand, what happened over there was using this film to gin up an angry mob as cover, I think, for an intelligence operation that led to the killing of our diplomats. And I would like to hear what Adam Kinzinger says about it, Congressman, when he comes up later.
Tom in the Quad Cities. Tom, you're on 89 WLS.
Yeah, I got to give credit where credit is due. There was a caller yesterday to Rush that really lit him up as far as the light bulb over the head. Rush's people supposedly went around and figured out that Osama bin Laden's death was mentioned like 21 times at the Democratic National Convention. And you got Obama himself and goofball Biden up there blabbing it all the time and throwing that in radical Islam's face. And I think that has a lot more to do with it than some obscure film off of YouTube. I think the community agitator and his flacks in the White House went and dug this thing up to use this as an excuse when really it had a lot more.
Well, they're not using that as an excuse. They're not using that excuse. The people in Egypt and Libya are the ones who are
right.
See,
what you have to figure out is, and we don't know the answer to this, who is responsible for pushing these news stories in the Arab world? That's part of it.
10:21. Back after this.
89 WLS.
Yeah, good luck, people.
We're going to have Congressman Adam Kinzinger coming up. Continue to take calls on what's going on in the Middle East. And, John, remind me to tell you how this all ties into an event in Chicago about 20 years ago.
Okay. After the break, I'd like to hear it.
That's John Kass of the Tribune. I'm Jake Hartford, in for Bruce and Dan, right here on 89 WLS.
Right here on Chicago's Talk Leader, 89 WLS.
10:37. Bruce and Dan show. John Kass, Jake Hartford, in for them. I want to remind you, can be so much happens while you're at work each day. For example, today the teachers are negotiating. Anyway, Rowe and Roper wrap it all up with some big-name guests, news, traffic, and some laughs. Afternoons 2 to 6 on Chicago's Talk Leader, 89 WLS. We are joined right now by Congressman Adam Kinzinger. Good morning, Congressman.
Hey, John and Jay, how are you guys?
Couldn't be better.
That's good. It's good to hear.
We want to talk to you about the jobs panel in a second, but we have to ask you, what is the latest you're hearing in D.C. on what actually came down with what happened in our Libyan embassy?
Yeah, it's this is an interesting situation. What you have is, a Libya that recently elected a very overwhelmingly secular and moderate government, but obviously getting that government really up and really fully activated is tough to do. That's what happens when you overthrow a dictatorial regime and now try to implement democracy. So in that process, though, you have what really appear to be potentially elements of al-Qaeda that attacked the embassy in a coordinated attack to commemorate 9/11 in their way, and that's what it's appearing to be. So it seems like, and the thing I'm very careful that I want to caution people is, this is not the Libyan government did this. This is not really even the Libyan people. These are very, radical jihadists that killed our ambassador and killed these brave people around him. And we need to go after the folks that did this. And I think this is very important right now for America to show strength.
Congressman, what you're saying then is that al-Qaeda elements are threatened by the secularists in Libya and therefore sought to do this in some way to discredit that government and force, a discussion about whether or not the Congress will withhold funding for Libya, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of an all of the above. They want to destabilize the Libyan regime, or the Libyan government. It's not really a regime anymore. They want to make, obviously take out their ire against the United States because we, at least for the most part, are the defenders of freedom around the globe. And so they want to accomplish this and all the above. There's still a lot more information that needs to come out. But again, this is al-Qaeda's goal, and this is extremist goal, is to see some of these folks that are waking up and wanting democracy to see it destabilized. And that's, I think, what's happening in Libya right now. So it's important that we stand by the Libyan government and continue to try to build freedom and democracy there, and also stand with them in rooting out these frankly terrible folks. And by the way, this Muslim video or whatever everybody's talking about, and frankly the president has apologized for, which I think is a bit much, is only being used as an excuse. The fact of the matter is, if it's not this video, it's going to be something else. There are people out there that want to kill us for who we are, and we have to continue to stand ready to take them out when we can.
How do you explain what happened in Egypt? This was like the scene out of the original Godfather movie when the Don is in the hospital, and all the guards, the police who were supposed to be there, just disappeared. Yeah. The Egyptian security, which is supposed to protect the outside of the embassy, they just disappeared.
Yeah. Well, that's totally inexcusable. You expect that even no matter where you are, if you have an embassy, whether it's a country that's hostile to you or not, that they will defend that embassy. And Marines in the embassy basically defend the inside, not the outside. And so it's sad to see. Egypt's a very different situation than Libya. Egypt is, really ruled by the Muslim Brotherhood. They talk about reopening basically the front with Israel. This is another big situation. Now, I really would love to have a stable Egypt, but at the same time, as a country, we can't continue to funnel aid to countries that are really going to be using it against us.
You've noticed, Congressman, that the Democrats and President Obama have had their difficulties with the Netanyahu administration in Israel. What do you see coming out of that relationship? And is it possible that it's getting so bad now that Netanyahu might just go at Iran right now before the election? Because what could Obama do about it?
It's absolutely possible. And, here's a sad thing. When even if there's differences, you keep those behind the scenes. But when the president and Netanyahu are openly showing daylight, and as frankly the president said a few years ago, we have to show daylight between our relationship with Israel, what you do is you invite weakness and you invite attacks and you invite threats against Israel. And that's the key. I mean, look, in the Middle East, they don't respond necessarily like we do in the West, where if two people are in a fight, one person will come forward humbly and apologize, and then you're friends again. It's not like that in the Middle East. In the Middle East, it's a matter of showing strength, and you actually can get your way. You can actually get some deals by showing strength. And, in Iran, and one of the biggest fears I have is that Israel will go it alone, and if they do, what if they fail at it? What if they don't completely eradicate Iran's nuclear weapons? Then what happens? And it becomes a much bigger mess, especially when the Middle East and the regimes there see that the United States is not willing to stand with a strong
To the American people, though, would the American people want to follow and go into another war. It seems that the Democrats have had their problems with even putting Jerusalem in the platform, so we understand their position.
Right.
But what about the Republicans now?
Yeah, well, look, there's a lot of war fatigue out there, and I think rightfully so. We're tired of being at war, but the reality is this. We have two options. We can retreat from the world, and chaos can ensue, and or we can continue to be the world leader. And, when it comes to Iran, I think the best way, frankly, to prevent going to war with Iran, and I don't mean it's not going to be a ground war, it'll be airstrikes, but the best way to prevent that is to be very serious and honest about the threat that Iran faces if they continue to pursue this. Because Iran has a choice to make. They say we can either pursue nuclear weapons, and we're not going to get them because we will be attacked and lose part of our infrastructure, or we can actually begin to negotiate with the West and ensure that we don't get these weapons. But I think when you don't show a credible threat of military action, it's much more likely that Iran gets nuclear weapons, which would be honestly very tragic and would be a major game changer in the world. Or that, Israel goes it alone and creates a bigger problem.
Congressman, we have less than a minute left here. What about your jobs panel that you're trying to do with Congressman Dan Lipinski?
Yeah, the American Competitiveness Act of 2012, we just passed it out of the House. We hope to get it to the Senate soon. And it creates an advisory board of Republicans and Democrats and public and private sector. So it's really bringing everybody together to say, okay, what does government need to do, or what don't we need to do that we are doing, and how do we simplify the tax code, et cetera, to get manufacturing going here again. And it really brings all sides together, kind of takes the politics out of it, and says what can we agree on and how can we do it. And I think this is a great first step to making us the most competitive country in the world, because we've dropped to number 7. We need to get back to number 1.
Thank you for your time this morning, Congressman.
You bet, guys. Have
Bye-bye.
a good one.
You too.
Thanks, Congressman.
Congressman Adam Kinzinger talking about what's going on in the Middle East and a little bit about jobs. We got to get back on the economy.
And also very thoughtfully, I thought.
10:45, back after this on 89 WLS.
89 WLS AM app for your iPhone, iPad, BlackBerry, and Android. And never miss a minute. Online at WLSAM.com.
Coming up to 10:51, John Kass with Jake Hartford here in for Bruce and Dan. Will be here again tomorrow, I believe.
I hope so.
Let me just...
and when we do, I want to know about your favorite political movies.
We'll talk about that. Let me go back to the original information that came out from the embassy in Cairo, their tweet and their statement and all that, as if all those people who were upset were going to say, wait a minute, there's a tweet coming in from the embassy that says they're against it, whatever, the free speech stuff. Here's the quote where I said the administration distanced themselves from the embassy. Quote, the statement by Embassy Cairo was not cleared by Washington and does not reflect the views of the United States government, unquote. And then
really
there's more
strong.
through there. Well, we're trying to put the fire on that because it is a free speech issue. I'm Catholic. There's a lot of stuff they do with Catholics.
Like Nicki Minaj on the Emmys.
Well, the stuff, you've seen with the urine and the excrement, and what do you do? It's the free speech. And here's what I wanted to remind everybody about. Remember back the Harold Washington painting?
I was covered mirth and girth.
For those who don't remember, Harold Washington was the mayor in the late 80s, and there was a painting that a student at the Art Institute did.
Mayor.
First black mayor. They did a painting with him in women's underwear. And there was a lot of uproar in Chicago.
It was quite frilly.
And a number of the Chicago aldermen ripped the painting down because they didn't believe in the free speech. Free speech is good until you actually have to put up with it. And sometimes you do.
Just go try to find an Obama chia head at Walgreens and see if you can do it.
So they ripped the painting down, and it ended up costing the taxpayers of Chicago a lot of money because the aldermen do not have the authorization to cancel somebody's free speech.
But it helped the aldermen since they didn't have to pay, and it helped them stand strong with their core followers on a symbolic issue, right, which was we're going to protect the integrity of Harold Washington's memory, even while they're all stabbing each other in the back to climb over and grab his seat. And
what's going on in the Middle East, it is supposedly about the movie. That's why they're ginned up. But in the past, it was the Quran supposedly.
Girls in
was
blue
ripped,
jeans. I don't know.
There's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. On the other hand, we have to also think. I agree with you 100% on this, but I just want everybody to think like Kinzinger was talking about. figure out who's really behind it and whose advantage is to have us, get our backs up and push for some kind of war. We have to think about this.
Anyway,
last time we were already gung-ho. I just want to think.
While you're thinking, I just want to remind you.
Yeah. You know what I mean.
That's John Kass of the Tribune. I'm Jake Hartford. Back after this.
89
We are done. We are done. Read Rumpelstiltskin in John's column today in the Tribune.
Yeah, and tomorrow we'll talk about your favorite political movies. That's what I'm waiting for. And a settlement of the strike for all the children.
Oh, I don't think it's coming until Monday. I think, and you would think they'd be negotiating around the clock. But they're starting at 10, 11 o'clock.
Girl, all those people who made fun of her because she's big understand she's pretty tough and smart. And she's winning.
I just hope she gets the 6 pianos or whatever it was, the music they wanted.
Right.
Because after everything else, that's just a throwaway. Anyway, Rush is coming up at 11 o'clock. Don't forget, Roe and Roper, 2 until 6. They will have all the big-name guests. They'll have the latest, what's going on in the Middle East. They'll have what's going on with the teacher strike. And who knows what other news will pop between now and then. But they will have the tabs covered full and complete. John Kass of the Tribune. I'm Jake Hartford. We'll be back for Bruce and Dan tomorrow. They are in for Don and Roman tomorrow. So anyway, see you tomorrow. 22 hours.
In our 89th year, entertaining Chicago. 89
WLS. That's the Chicago Report. I'm Lyle Dean.
I'm Geraldo Rivera.